Want to learn how to install a slant back attic vent? Well, you're in luck because I am going to make this very easy for you and in no time have you install these vents like a true professional. Let's get started. Step number 1. Cut all 3 sides, rows 1, 2, and 3, and pull every nail 1 foot around your work area. Do not cut any part of row number 4, also known as a dotted line, at least not yet. These vents measure 12 inches wide. What you see me doing is I am measuring as if the vent is 13 inches wide. That way, there is a ½ inch gap between the vent and the shingles per side. It's very important with these vents and any roofing accessories, whether it's a skylight, plumbing boot, dryer vent, chimneys, etc., that you have a ½ inch to 1 inch space between the shingles and the flashing for proper water flow. You don't want to give water any excuses to stand around to create any dams or backup. You want water to flow down as free as possible, which is why it's very important that you give that extra space between the shingles and the flashing. Before we move on to step number 2, I want to point out 2 things. 1, please check the weather. We will be cutting a hole through the roof, and the last thing you want is an open hole with a rainstorm coming and your roof will leak. So please make sure you check the weather, okay? Give yourself that extra time. And second, before you make this cut, I want you to go into the attic and figure out where you want to place these vents, because since we cutting a hole through the roof, you don't want to cut through any AC lines or water lines, anything electrical, anything like that. You want to make sure there's no obstacles like that in the way. Step number 2. Trace your circle cutout before you cut into your decking and know exactly where your hole is going to be. An easy way to mark your hole is by measuring a 4½ inch radius circle centered 10 inches down from row number 1. Use one of the old nails you pulled out from step number 1 and use it as your center mark. You can't see from this angle, but I'm actually using the metal tip of my tape to scratch out my circle. You can do this too, or you could also use a chalk to mark your circle, whatever's easiest for you. This is the only time that you will cut the dotted line, also known as row number 4. Step number 3, use your saw to cut circular trays. Before you make your cut, I recommend you do what I do and double check your work area. Make sure that you pulled every nail out of your area. That way your shingles and your vent could slip in and make the next step very easy for you. Something I want to say about these vents is that most people and even some roofers don't understand how attic ventilation works. A lot of people think it's all about letting hot air out, so most people focus on exhaust vents. We, on the other hand, like to use these particular vents as an intake vent. That way our exhaust vents have something to draw air from. Attic venting is very simple. Imagine blowing in and out of a bag. A bag with no holes will let you get no outside fresh air and eventually go into your mouth. Now, use that same bag and punch a few holes on the end, and I guarantee you will immediately notice a difference. Check out the cards above for our 3 free attic cooling tips YouTube video, or visit our website linked in the description below for our full instant attic cool down article. I promise you, you will start seeing attic venting from a whole nother perspective. Step number 4, slide in your vent and center it over your 9-inch hole. If the previous steps were properly followed, the vent should easily center itself with no further cutting. You might also ask yourself why we are installing a vent over a 9-inch hole when it should be a 10-inch hole. Well, being that these vents are made to be installed over a 10-inch hole, I still prefer to make my hole 1 inch smaller, simply because it gives you a little bit of room for error. The last thing that you want is to overcut the hole and make the hole too close to your vent's side flashings. like these vents, but I wish that they came with a wider side flashing, which is why it's very important you do what I'm doing here by using one shingle per side of the vent and install them vertically, sandwiched between the roof deck and your flashing. This shingle is going to serve you as a flashing extender, also known as your starter shingle. Believe it or not, this shingle and your roof seal that's coming up in the next step will help you tremendously from having a potential roof leak. Step number 5. Use your 1.25" roofing nails and install 2 to 3 nails per vertical edge side, fastening both the vent and the vertical shingle at the same time. I want you to also notice my nail placement. I am installing my nails as close to the flashing's edge as possible because it makes the water have to travel further to see a nail head. Nail holes and water do not have a good end result. Step number 6. Use your preferred roof seal to seal your vertical edges. Remember to install your seal as close to the vent's edge as possible, making contact with both your vertical shingle and the metal. Make sure to apply seal over your newly installed nail heads as well. Do the same thing for both sides. 2 pro tips I want to point out on this step is that first, I want you to notice how I'm using my caulk gun to reach far up to the vent's top edge as possible. Make sure you reach all the way up along the vent's vertical edge. If you pulled every nail from step 1, this should be very easy for you. And I want you to also go ahead and try to install seal on the top horizontal side edge flashing as well. If you feel that you can't or you're afraid to tear up the horizontal shingle from row number 1, then don't worry that much about it. It's not worth damaging the shingle from row number 1 and creating a potential bigger problem. The 2 vertical edges are a lot more important. Those are the ones I want you to make sure you apply seal all the way to the top. Second tip is that for asphalt shingle repairs like these, I prefer to use basic roof cement. It's the most effective than any other fancy high dollar seal out there, especially for these type of small projects. Step number 7. Reinstall every nail you pulled out from step number 1 and apply roof seal to all the old nail holes. 2 tips I also want to point out here is that I want you to install your new nails on new nail holes. Don't try to use the old nail holes because your nails will not hold on to anything firm. I want you to make sure that your new nails are holding on to a firm piece of shingle. Second is I want you to notice where I'm placing my new nails. I am well aware of the flashing's perimeter, where it ends and where it begins, and I am not getting too close to the edge or past my seal line where I applied the vertical seal from the previous step. Installing a nail past your seal line means that you are leaving a nail hole with no protection, which could in turn cause a leak. Now, if you're wondering about the horizontal nailing of the flashing, I am also installing my nails on the shingle, but I am aware of the flashing's size, which is why I'm installing my nails a bit high on the horizontal shingle or row number 1 because I want to make sure that I get both the shingle and the flashing, but not nailed too low to create a roof leak. Step number 8 and final. Install 2 to 3 rubber gasket metal screws along the bottom exposed metal flashings. The reason why I like to use screws instead of nails is because these screws, they're very difficult for them to back up or to cause leaks. You can seal them if you like. I never do, and it works perfectly fine. The screw placement, I also want you to kind of put them towards the center. Don't put them too close to the vertical edge. That's all I've got for you guys. I hope this video was very helpful. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you guys like what you see, again, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching.